If you've ever wondered if the grief support groups can be helpful or not, we're going to look at that today. For some people, as they're considering should they join a grief support group, will it be effective, will it be helpful in managing the emotions of grief, or finding a community that you can be a part of to help you through the process of grief, it can have great benefits, but it can also have some drawbacks, and it's important to know the difference between a grief support group and a grief therapy group. Oftentimes with a grief support group, you're going to find a very welcoming and friendly environment of people who understand, who are extremely supportive, and who want to be part of helping you as you're helping them, and as a shared community helping each other through the grieving process. So the wonderful thing is that you'll find a caring group of people in grief support groups. You will get ideas and techniques on how to be able to successfully navigate through the grieving process as you listen to other people who are going through grief and who have found some things that work and who have found some surprising difficulties. And in listening, you may get ideas for things that you can try to help you as you go through this process. Now, joining a grief support group can also help you to build a support team, to begin to have relationships and friendships that are born out of being part of that group, that help provide support when you're dealing with the tough days of grief, when you're having any anniversary dates, any dates that remind you of your loved one and become a difficult period for you. You can call on your support team. You can call on individuals who you built relationships with in the grief group to help you even when you're not formally in the group setting. The other benefit to being part of a grief group is that if your personality is one that thrives more in social environments and being amongst people and being in group, then having that kind of support can be very beneficial. You can find that you'll get daily and weekly encouragement if you're part of a grief group, and grief support groups help to provide validation to the experiences that you're having, experiences that by yourself you may find yourself questioning, is this normal? Is this right? Should I feel this way? And then when you're amongst other people in the same grieving process, you realize that much of what you're experiencing is normal, and that much of what you're experiencing, someone else has had that experience at some point in time. And it may look a little different, but just hearing that someone else has gone through this helps you to not feel alone. The other benefit too is that you start to hear your own experience through the eyes of others as they give you feedback when you share about some of the questions, concerns, and thoughts that you've been having as you're going through the process of grief. And you learn more. Most of the grief groups have an educational component where you can learn some very basics about the grieving process, and also sometimes even more advanced things about how to cope with grief. And then you also get the benefit of feeling as if you're part of giving back to others, because when you're by yourself and you're in the thick of grief, sometimes you may feel like I want to help others, but I don't have the strength, or you're not sure how to help other people. But when you join a grief group, you just sharing words of encouragement, of affirmation, of respect, of kindness is helping to give back to other people who are part of that group. And in the group, it can help you by providing you with more tools, but also help you to address some of the challenges that you have, that you'll face when you're in the beginning of the grieving process, when it's quite early in your loss and you're not sure where to start or how you should feel or what to think, when everything seems out of place and out of sorts and overwhelming. A group can help you to just process some of that overwhelming feelings, some of those anxieties, so that you can reduce it to a manageable load rather than just feeling like it's too much or it's more than you can bear, because you're sharing it within a group context. Now, it's important to be cautious. If you have ever had a significant past trauma, or if you've been diagnosed with a personality disorder diagnosis, you might find that group is a little bit more challenging for you. And so I want you to be cautious before you decide to join a group, because you want to make sure that you're protected before you go into a situation where you're going to feel vulnerable or that it might exacerbate some of your symptoms, especially if something goes wrong. So it's not that grief groups are everything. It's important for you to be clear about your expectations, but also know if this will be a setting that works for you, or maybe it's better to be an individual one-on-one counseling, or just have a peer that helps support you through your grieving process. Now, we know that when you put groups of people with different personalities, backgrounds, and stories together, there are going to be some difficulties, some challenges. And so there will be some things that happen that are not helpful in your grieving process. And one of those things might be you might go in feeling concerns about being judged. So you might have some pre-group concerns. Well, what am I going to say? What if I say this? What if someone's story is different? Or, what if I'm being judged for the way that I'm grieving or how I'm handling it? Now, many of those are our own natural human anxieties coming up, where we worry about things that are not likely to take place, or we worry about the worst possible scenario rather than going in thinking about what is it that you hope to get from the group, and really going in with faith that you're going to get something positive out of it. Now, there are some people who feel anxious after the group, because after the group they feel like, based on what they said, that maybe they were judged related to the circumstances of their loss or how they're handling it, and some of that can be valid. And if it is valid, that might not be a safe group for you to return to. But you want to be able to sort through, is this what happened, or is this what you are interpreting based on maybe someone not giving you the verbal cues that you were looking for, the verbal feedback. So you want to sort through some of your emotions related to that to make sure that if it's accurate, that you look for another group, that you will try more than one group. And oftentimes, one of the things that we tell people is, give a group at least two chances. Because maybe the day that you went wasn't a day that the leader was there, or wasn't the best day, or maybe it was a unique situation. Try the group one more time, and if you leave with the same feeling, then maybe just try a different group. So give the group at least 2 tries, and then try more than one group till you find the one that best suits your need. Now, in group settings, sometimes we get bad advice, that even though we're going through the same type of experience, somebody may give you bad advice, and know that can be found anywhere, but it's important that if your expectations are that everyone's going to get the best advice, everyone is trained, everyone is sensitive, that may not be what you experience all the time. That is what you should experience. Your leader should be trained and sensitive, and make sure that the group is inclusive of all people, even newcomers and those who have been there for a long time. That is all inclusive, and everybody gets a chance to share. But sometimes things happen because we're human, and sometimes people make mistakes in not being able to make sure that everyone is included. Some of the other negative things that could happen is you could find that it's just overwhelming, depending on the size or the scope of the group, or how close the group is. So maybe there are people that you're going into a group that have been coming there for weeks, months, years even. And so you might feel like an outsider because this is your first time where they've known each other for months or years. So that may become a little overwhelming. Just give yourself time. Give yourself time and find, before you go, the right group for you. Now, there are sometimes that feeling of an outsider can be discouraging, and sometimes we have expectations that a group is going to be therapeutic when it's really a support group and not a therapy group. So it's important to know the difference between the two. Some groups are therapy groups, and some groups are only what we would call peer support groups. People who are going through the same thing, may or may not have some type of formal training, that are there to just put the group together so you can have an opportunity to share. So be clear about the type of group that you're looking for. Be proactive in helping to build relationships with other people in the group. Take your time to research and find the right group in your area. If you can't find a group, maybe consider starting a group. If you're willing to go through some training, and maybe there's a community center near you, maybe there's space in your building where they have a conference room, or maybe your local church or synagogue or faith establishment has the opportunity for you to start some type of support group for those who are going through grief. Maybe if this has been a desire in your heart, maybe you're one to do that. And it's important to get support and get training before you decide to do that, if that's where you're headed. Now let's talk about grief group therapy. Now, group therapy involves therapeutic interventions. So, support groups are run by lay people with a personal experience in the topic, a genuine desire to help, and some training on a particular curriculum. Now, therapy groups are run by licensed professionals focused on a specific diagnosis or problem set, and the therapist is there to help give you insight and definitely give techniques for coping. Therapy groups are a lower cost way of getting therapy. So let's say that the cost of therapy has been prohibited for you to go. Well, you might want to join a therapy group, a therapy processing group, because then you can get therapeutic interventions but not have to pay the price of individual one-on-one counseling. Now, it is for the therapist who's leading that group to ensure that discussion is not only productive but stays on task and topic, and that the group environment is one where everyone feels safe to participate. Now, the wonderful thing about the group is that you're going to continue to get feedback from various people that allow you to see yourself and see your problem from a different perspective. And with the therapy processing group, your therapist is going to encourage people to participate. Where with a support group, you can choose participate or not, and so you have some anonymity in some support groups. Now, if you try more than one group, if you give yourself at least 2 sessions, stay open-minded, share when it feels safe to do so, and even include group as part of your overall treatment, as part of your overall care package for you as you go through your grief process. That is the best type of way, so that you have care from individuals, families, friends. You may go to one-on-one counseling, and then you might also have group. So you have a plethora of coping skills to help you through the tough times of grief. Now, if you're looking for just a regular support group, go ahead and search grief support group and make sure to put in your zip code so that you can find ones that are near you. Now, some of the support groups are free, but then others offer materials which come at a low cost for the materials, and maybe that low cost also covers some space rental time and snacks for the group. If you want to find a therapy group, you're going to search grief therapy group specifically, and if you find that it's run by a licensed therapist, counselor, social work, psychologist, or psychiatrist, then you know it's a therapy group. Now, if it's a therapy group, it usually has a fee attached to each session or the group total, and then you'll find that there might be an intake process where they go over the rules, regulation, requirements, since they're a professional offering a support group versus just a lay person. They fall under different requirements, and that will require some paperwork and maybe an individual session before you go into the group. But that's how you'll know that it's a therapy group versus a traditional support group. So whichever one you choose, I hope you consider, getting more support. And if you can't do it through a group, by building your own support system. But most of all, to take care of yourself and to ensure that you're putting a plan in place to help you through the grieving process. Thank you for joining me.